it's Drybear. Yesterday, we started digging into all of the developer responses we've been getting over the last week or so, including the AMA. So let's continue on where we left off, just talking about the feedback that players have had for the game on Dune Awakening, and also the responses that devs have had to that feedback, and the tons of direct questions people have had about the game and its future. Starting with a big question, how do you plan on fixing the PvP balance at the moment? Surely the Scout shouldn't have offensive capabilities as a balance. And this one I think is kind of an interesting discussion point, and also I feel like there is a chance that Funcom does a bit of a pendulum swing here, which I hope doesn't happen. The current situation is that there isn't really much reason to run anything other than Scout Ornithopter, because the only thing that you are going to get from the Assault Ornithopter or the Carrier is really just going to be the little bit of extra HP, but you lose a lot of speed for it, and the extra storage. And so most people just run, everyone's running Scout Ornithopters. They're faster, they have rocket capabilities, they have a storage surely, but they also do have kind of the same capabilities as well. So there has been a ton of feedback on the Scout Ornithopters as well, specifically, and how to make them better and a little bit more fair. So the question is, how do you plan on fixing the PvP balance, specifically around the Scout Ornithopter? The response from the devs is things they're considering for the Scout Ornithopter. First, equipping a Scout Ornithopter with rocket pods would reduce the overall maneuverability and max speed. This would help solidify the module selection as a desire to engage in combat and balance it versus other combat-focused vehicles. So slowing the Scout Ornithopter speed down if it is outfitted with rockets. Scout Ornithopter rockets to cost slightly more heat to fire, so the vehicle would heat up faster if you're firing rockets, limiting its combat usefulness relative to the Assault Ornithopter while still allowing it to be an aerial threat. And lastly, Scout Ornithopter thrusters to provide a bonus to the maximum speed of the Ornithopter at all times, even when gliding. So, you know, making its combat capabilities be a little bit more focused on a trade-off, and then keeping the speed being the major factor for the Scout Ornithopter. Let me know what you think about this. I think there's definitely a risk that they could, like I said, pendulum swing the opposite way and end up like completely, you know, making the Scout Ornithopter useless in comparison. I think the Scout Ornithopter should be a nice gateway opportunity, especially for solo players to be able to play in the deep desert and then escape if they're outnumbered, right? I think there's definitely a situation now where you have too many like large group, large guild activities, and so small groups or solo players will have a major difficulty trying to do things in the deep desert at all. You could make an argument that maybe the deep desert isn't meant for solo players, but then if that's the case, then they really need to make, you know, solo available activities that fit for solo players that want to still at least take part in the end game, considering that right now the only way to, you know, move into tier 6 progression is to do the deep desert. So if you're a small group of like 2 or 3 players, or you're a solo player, there needs to be an outlet for you to be able to do it other than just farming Haga Basin and, you know, getting the Solarity so that you can spend them on the auction house to buy things that other people got to get in the deep desert. So I think there's definitely some room for improvement for the solo play and the Scout Ornithopter, but there's also a risk that they, you know, pendulum swing too far the other way and make it kind of useless or impossible for solo players to participate. Next, a question from a player. Right now, it seems that the game is heavily tied to vehicular movement. As someone who wants to be a desert wanderer, relying heavily on walking the desert, are there any plans to add something like sand walking, really enjoying the game? And the response from the devs is, we will do walking without rhythms. They want to add in more options for being able to cross the desert with some kind of technique. Right now, you can kind of stop in waves and crouch and try and lower your overall value, but based on the hidden, like, you know, worm activity meter that you get on your character, at a certain point, you're just going to get, you're going to peak out on the meter, and then the worm's going to come for you, which means that you pretty much have to have an Ornithopter or a vehicle to cross large swaths of worm territory if you see worm sign on your screen, but it sounds like they do want to be able to walk across large swaths if you do it correctly. Next is a fun one that people ask, is something that's very popular in MMOs in general, though I wouldn't consider Dune Awakening an MMO, but it it is kind of an interesting idea. They said, will you add an option for duels so you can 1v1 your teammates or 1v1 random people that go by, or maybe you land on a spice plume, you're like, hey, 1v1 me for the spice. Will you be adding an option for duels? And the response to the developers is a resounding yar. Yes, we are planning to add the possibility to duel. Based on the response here, I don't think it's going to be in the July update. It'll probably be in a future update, maybe a quarter from now, like fall, winter, that sort of thing. But it is on the radar for them. They do want to have the option to duel other players, which I think would be really fun for testing builds and also just, honor dueling over things, which could be pretty cool. Next is, I think, probably a little bit of a niche thing. Most people use pentashields in general for their base. I use them very liberally in my current guild base, but we have a door tall enough to include the buggy so the buggy can drive through it with the mining laser. So if you're using the wide door right now, even like the Harkonnen tall door isn't wide enough for the buggy. So they're basically asking, can we get a door that isn't a pentashield that the buggy can drive through with an attachment on the rear utility, either a turret or a mining laser or something. My poor buggy is left outside under a bit of a roof most of the time. Not a huge fan of the aesthetics that pentashields offer for a base. So they just want more variety with being able to customize. And I think that would actually you could extend this out further and say, hey, can we get more building sets that have more options, that do more for the bases that we build in general? That certainly could be. There's so many different directions they can go with making the bases a lot more varied in what we can do. And the response from the devs was, we don't have that on the roadmap currently, but it's a good idea. We'll see what we can do. So it doesn't sound like we're getting building sets coming along for the July update in the next couple weeks, but they're going to add it to the list and see if they can add in more door options. I think a lot of people just are using pentashields right now. I have a massive pentashield hanger on the top of the guild base that I built, but I think obviously, yeah, if you're someone who doesn't like pentashields and you want more building set options, that's kind of a cool idea. Next is a big one that I had forgotten about because it feels like it's been forever since I finished the campaign for the game. But if you haven't finished the campaign, without giving spoilers, the last trial before you begin like the story ending of the game, the last trial, only one person can do it at a time. So you'll have this person that's like, they have their face up against the door for the last trial, and only one person can go in at a time. And so you have to you set up a queue like you're waiting in line at the bank trying to do it. It's so archaic and very bizarre in the way that they do it. So the question is, why isn't the final trial instanced like all of the rest of the trials, or even like the campaign, the ending campaign encounters? It results in a queue of players lining up, dying of thirst. Players are then pushed to rush through a big story beat so that their peers can get in. And the response is kind of a weird one, mostly due to technical and time limitations. We fully understand this is not optimal. We will look at improving this in the future. I'm not sure why the final trial has technical or time limitations for it. I mean, obviously it's not like you're not going to the overworld map and going to special locations like you do with some of the other campaign related events. It is part of Haga Basin, like it's built into the wall that you finish off with a trial there. So maybe because it's based in Haga Basin world space, they can't have multiple people going through it at the same time, and they don't want to instance it by loading you into a different area. They want Haga Basin to be continuous in that front. So I guess that's going to be the case there, but I feel like this is kind of like a very weird cop-out answer, because at the end of the day, it leads to a very, very bad experience for players, and especially on the higher populated servers. It's going to continue to be a problem for newer players, though granted, it's probably going to be less prevalent as, you know, the amount of players doing the trial at once is going to go down, because there's, you know, it's going to be a trickle of new players coming in rather than a bunch of new players at once. But it sounds like, you know, they have some reason why they have set it up that way, and they have some restriction that they're working with, but hopefully they can sort that out. It is a one-time thing, so once you get past the last trial, you're done, but still, it is very bizarre. Next player asks, are there any plans for procedural or radiant contracts at the outpost board? So basically, this one has been brought up many times by players, but right now in the game, there is a finite amount of handcrafted contracts on the contract boards in Haga Basin, which means that it is like a fixed sequence. You finish all the contracts and then you're done. You have no new contracts to do. There's no repeatable Haga Basin content. Once you're done, and then you're just kind of setting up for the deep desert. So they're asking, like, can we get like more dynamic procedural contracts that pop up constantly. I mean, you could do this with like the delivery contracts, right? Like the Haga Basin contracts, they're like, hey, give me a cut array or give me a sand bike or, you know, give me a compactor or something. Those could be generated randomly and then filled out by players very easily. So the question is, can we get more of those? Because right now, once you're done, it just feels kind of empty. And the response is a bit of a disappointing one. It's not on our plans right now, but we're always looking at viable options to add to the game as long as it fits with Dune. They did mention that they are adding more contracts, both PvP contracts and PvE contracts for Deep Desert, as well as potentially even the faction hubs and Haga Basin. So they are handcrafting more contract sequences, but I think this is going to be an ongoing problem because, you know, they're going to release, say, 15 new contracts. People are going to get on and slurp them up like, you know, drunken noodles and be done with it. And they're going to be like, win more contracts, right? So I think a more scalable system that would allow them to have more dynamic or organic contracts popping up all the time, I think would go a long way in helping the contract system feel like it is repeatable and is something that you could go to for content regularly. Next, this has already been confirmed, but they are adding a deposit all water option as a quality of life. They're also asking for more color options, more swatches, and labels, which they did confirm yesterday as well, that they are going to be bringing in the ability to mark chest and storage boxes with names. You know, usually survival games will do like icons or something, but even be able to just type something in to label it would be super cool. They do plan to come to console next year, so, you know, typing in names for console gets a little squirrely because not everyone has a keyboard laying not nearby, and then if you have to do like a pop-up keyboard in some games, it gets kind of weird depending on your TV and stuff like that. So if they're future-proofing, they probably won't do like a type-in label, but most, you know, dual platform games will do like a selectable list of icons and colors. You can do like, this is blue. They can have like a spice symbol or an ore symbol or a mechanical part symbol or a servox symbol that you could use to organize what your storage is. And we know that there is a deposit all water feature coming, which I think is pretty much certain that it's going to be in the July update in the next couple weeks. Next is a big one, and I think this is going to be an ongoing debate. There right now are two camps, and it's not Harkonnen and Atreides, it's the PvEers and the PvPs. That's like the big faction war that's going on right now in Dune Awakening. People are wanting more PvE, more PvP. The PvPers are telling the PvEers to get good, and the PvEers are telling the PvPers to take a shower, and it's just this kind of ongoing thing. So the big question here is, curious if there will be boss fights or raids or dungeons or any activities like that. The game is fantastic, and they're super happy about it. I think the PvE right now is very bullet spongy. It's a very simple, like, Rochambeau, rock, paper, scissors thing. Like, the heavies are, you know, very tanky with heavy shields, and so you have to work with them, and then the ranged guys put pressure on your shield, or if you're firing a weapon and your shield goes down, it makes you weak, and then you have the melee characters that force you to react to them and deal with them while they're putting pressure on them. So you kind of have, like, this Rochambeau of, like, you gotta have a way to beat the melee characters, and a way to keep the ranged guys off of you, and a way to not take damage from the heavies until you're ready to deal with them, and that cycle continues. But it would be very cool if they could add in more like raid encounters, more PvE encounters, and honestly, if they want to keep this dichotomy of PvP, PvE, they certainly could just do how like the testing stations are in Deep Desert, where there are more dungeons with more encounters that people can come up and third party you from behind if they want to kind of keep that. But I do definitely agree with the idea that having more options for PvE and just making that a healthy part of the game would go a long way. The response from the dev was, we will continue to evolve our PvE content, including adding boss encounters as part of future dungeons. They technically have boss encounters right now, but realistically, they're just normal enemies with increased health pools and increased shield amounts. And it's not like super special. Some of them have like more of the character abilities that we have normally, but in general, I think it would be really cool to have options. And I think a lot of people are also probably very excited about having the option of including Shai Hulud as part of the PvE as well, potentially riding Shai Hulud or riding the worm, or having some, you know, PvE encounters with the worm as well. Next is a real quick one. It's an issue with respecking in general. Sometimes when you respec, you lose an ability. It's not always like the player is talking about how you lose your starting skill when you do it. It's not always a starting skill, and I've had abilities that have been permanently inaccessible until I respec again, which is very unfortunate given the 48-hour cooldown. So like you have an ability and then, you know, the ability, you lose the ability to use it. Like that ability is no longer accessible. You can't put it on your bar. You can't use it until you respec, but then you have to pay the 48-hour cooldown, which if you are on cooldown right now, you just can't use that ability until 2 days later. So they have confirmed that this is a bug. They say definitely a bug. It will be fixed in an upcoming patch. So look forward to that one. Next is a great question. Will there be a roadmap published soon? Like other games that do this, what kind of quality plans will there be? Decoration, building packs, yada, yada. Because they've said repeatedly that, you know, with the launch of the game, they're focusing right now primarily on bug fixing and, you know, stability, right? That's their big focus, which I think is the right way to go. You definitely don't want to spend too much time on that, right? Like if you spend 3 to 6 months only doing stability, people are going to get bored and leave. But obviously you want to make sure that the people that are unable to play the game or are having like game breaking bugs or blockers or soft locks, you want to make sure you squash those out as quickly as possible to make sure that kind of like lines up properly. But a good question is like, hey, if you keep saying soon TM, they've confirmed some things, but like what about a roadmap? Like what can we expect for, you know, the 3 month, if they're going to do 3 month patches quarterly, what about next quarter? What about the quarter after that? What about next year? What can we look forward to in the future of Dune? And can you actually keep us informed on that? And Funcom responds, yes, we intend to keep you in the loop on what's coming, and we will share our mid to long-term plans soon TM. So more soon TM. However, they may not take the form of a static roadmap asset. So maybe they're not going to do that. They're kind of just doing these AMAs and, you know, impromptu responses on questions and things like that. So like, yeah, like we'll have to just kind of summarize what's going on, but they are looking to hopefully have a little bit more of a structured response, hopefully, to this question in the coming month. Next is a great question. Are there plans for map expansion? Now, they're saying there's an issue with the size. The map is quite big, but was fairly curious if there are going to be any future map expansions, like making the Haga Basin bigger. I don't think they should make the Deep Desert bigger. I think they should make the Deep Desert more dense. One of the gripes I have with the Deep Desert after playing the Deep Desert a lot is that it starts to feel kind of empty. The amount of events that trigger from the Deep Desert feel like they just don't happen very often. Sometimes I'll do like entire stretches of time, like 45 minutes to an hour of just gliding around. You don't get that many spice plumes, and when they pop up, sometimes they're populated by large guilds with like 6 to 10 ornithopters that, as a solo player or a small group player, I can't contest that at all. So I'm looking for more events, or maybe the POIs being closer together. It does feel like the Deep Desert, though it is a desert, is a little barren. So making that map bigger, I think, wouldn't be as needed, but it would be cool to see some expansions to Haga Basin, or potentially even like a DLC or expansion pack that makes like a tier 7 or a tier 8 where you can work further along, or maybe just even having another map added to the game that just increases the amount of content that's available. The response is a very encouraging one. We have many plans to expand the game with additional maps in the future, and the Overland map is one of our vehicles to do so. They did mention, you know, in the before launch that they wanted to do a lot of like impromptu like events that trigger on the Overland map, where you like go on the Overland map and random dungeons might appear for a short period of time, and if you see it, you can jump in and you can loot them for really cool loot, and then you go back to your Overland map, something that's part of that. I think there's definitely a lot of room to expand the Overland map. I almost wish they would like make it like gamify a little bit more, maybe even make it a little more arcadey, like boosts and turns. Right now it's like a giant square and you just have to take the time to fly to one corner of the square depending on where you're going. I think there's a lot of room to make the Overland map a lot more interesting and engaging, so they want to use that as well. And they say that Dune universe has a lot of interesting locations and worlds to explore, and we're looking forward to and continuing to build on top of the foundation that we have. And in the interest of keeping this video short, we'll pause there for today and pick this up again in the next video. Just kind of keep up with the devs' responses, so we're keeping up with that. Again, we're looking forward to a early July patch release that will help like expand the game further, and we'll know a lot more about what's going into that. Let me know what your expectations are for upcoming updates for Dune Awakening and what you're looking forward to in the future as well. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.